Telstra CEO resigns after leading the company through its biggest transformation in years. Mixed reaction to Tuesday night's budget, the Ukrainian President to speak to Australian Parliament, and Fortescue clarifies a $50 billion comment. It's Thursday, the 31st of March, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and Sean Aylmer's back in just a couple of days, fresh from a Fiji holiday. What a week to go away. He's missed all of the budget fun. But in his absence, I'm joined instead by Adam Lang from the Fear and Greed team. Adam is, of course, a former CEO, now a business and executive coach and advisor. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Have you enjoyed the budget week? What a cracking week for you to be on the show.
Absolutely. I felt spoiled.
Oh, yes. Yeah. For anyone who is interested in economics and in business and really in politics as well, it is a fantastic week, absolutely rich in stories. So we've got a couple more good ones to discuss today. We'll get to that in a minute. And immediately after the show as well, stay listening for an interview with media commentator Tim Burrows. It's a terrific insight into the state of the media industry and also what will happen between now and the election. But first, Adam, as I mentioned before, in terms of iconic Australian companies, Telstra would have to be pretty close to the top of the list. It's also the most widely held stock in Australia with 1.2 million shareholders, many of them retail investors, many of those self-funded retirees. So, news that CEO Andy Penn is retiring actually has a pretty broad impact right across the country. Mr. Penn's decision to leave Telstra later this year after 9 years at the company, 6 by then it will be 7 years as CEO. It's come as a bit of a shock depending on whether you're in the industry or out of it. It's got to be said though, his time as CEO is widely seen as a success because he led the company through some extraordinary changes, really trying to modernise a massive corporation in a rapidly evolving telco sector.
That's right, Michael, and I think it's worth looking at the organisation he's leaving behind compared to the one he inherited from David Thodey back in 2015. So in that time, he's really focused on making the operation leaner, cutting $2.5 billion in costs as part of his T22 transformation program. The company shed about 8,000 jobs and has streamlined its offering to customers. Would you believe, and this is an incredible statistic, Telstra went from offering 1,800 different plans to just 20. Now, it's incredible. At times, Telstra has been under pressure. Its classic cable and wires business is obviously last century's technology, and it still faces stiff competition in the mobile, wireless and broadband fields. But under Andy Penn, Telstra aggressively expanded into that area to try to keep up. And you might remember just last month, Telstra did a deal with TPG to get access to TPG's 4G and 5G spectrum in regional zones.
The market, though, has been fairly unkind to Telstra since Andy Penn started as CEO in May 2015. On the day he started, I think the share price was about $6.20, $6.24, somewhere around that mark. During his time, it dropped to below half that, although in recent months it has been back up around $4. It's a bit below that now. As I said, though, there's a lot of shareholders watching very closely, and the Telstra dividend is very, very important to a lot of people. Now, Andy Penn's going to be succeeded by Telstra's current Chief Financial Officer, Vicky Brady. Question without notice for you, Adam.
Oh, good.
Your favourite.
Yes.
You've been the CEO of an ASX listed company. You now advise other CEOs. You advise boards. Telstra is a big organisation. There is a lot of responsibility there for the incoming CEO to customers, to staff, to shareholders. What does Vicky Brady need to do as the incoming CEO?
So, Michael, clearly she is very well credentialed. She's worked at Optus, she's worked in Telstra across a range of businesses, and especially in her current role, she would have worked very closely with the board, and she's clearly impressed them. And she'll take that new CEO role from the 1st of September. So, in my humble opinion, there's a few things to do. I'm sure she knows exactly what she's doing, but amongst them have to be keep doing a great job even amongst this new dynamic. Telstra is so high profile, Michael. As you pointed out, it reaches consumers, businesses. It's got over 37,000 employees, massive turnover. So this new dynamic will put some additional context on her. She's got to keep impressing the board and develop a relationship with key investors. She's also got to work on the handover from Andy Penn to CEO. And amongst that, keep working with the other executives, the other 8 from the leadership team, on how she wants to galvanise the company around her goals for the company and its 37,000 employees. Michael, this is a huge role and it's going to be a fascinating period. We should wish her luck.
Yeah, we certainly do. And I mentioned Telstra's share price. The price yesterday closed down 0.7% on the resignation news. Elsewhere on the market yesterday, Adam, it was a pretty good day on the S&P ASX 200. The market climbed 0.7% to hit another 50-day high. The tech sector did well, though mining and resource stocks came off a bit, not helped by the declining oil price and a pretty steep drop in the coal price too. There is plenty happening today, Adam. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Now, Adam, as you might expect, reaction yesterday to Tuesday's budget was mixed. But as I heard one person say, if you're an adult with a pulse, there was something in it for you, which I think is actually quite a good way to characterise an election year budget. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese probably gets the award for the best budget put down, saying the budget has all the sincerity of a fake tan, but he will get his opportunity to respond in Parliament tonight with his budget in reply speech. But, Adam, in the couple of days after the budget, it's always interesting to see what little nuggets emerge from kind of deep within the budget papers.
Yeah, as people get to wrestle with the content a bit more, and in this case there's all the usual things like welfare, health, jobs, education programs, but if you go into that detail a bit more, there are some gems. Like one I thought of was the defence allocation of $1 billion to buy self-propelled howitzers. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, think of it as a remote control tank. Now imagine the problems you could cause by trying to drive one of those things. And before I move on, not every Australian with a pulse is a winner out of Tuesday's budget. Here's a handy fear and greed heads up for tax avoiders. The ATO's Tax Avoidance Task Force received another 4 years funding in the budget and is expected to get back $2.1 billion in extra tax revenue over those 4 years.
I like the idea of issuing handy fear and greed heads-ups of things that people need to be aware of. And this one is specifically for any tax avoiders who may be listening to us today. I wonder how many there are.
Maybe we can run a poll on LinkedIn.
I actually don't know whether people would answer that one, honestly, because the ATO would probably be able to access those results. Anyway, we won't do that. That is an idea that we'll put a pin in that one, Adam. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is going to address the Australian Parliament this afternoon. He has spoken to parliaments all around the world. He's obviously doing it remotely. He's spoken, I think, to the US Congress, House of Commons in the UK. He's spoken to the Canadian Parliament and the German. It's now Australia's turn. It's happening in the House of Representatives at 5:30 this afternoon. It will be fascinating to hear him speak.
It will. And amongst this time, in addition to reaching out to the rest of the world and talking to us about what's going on in his country, overseas, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators have met face-to-face in Istanbul. Ukraine has agreed to declare itself permanently neutral, foregoing the chance to join NATO in exchange for security guarantees from Russia. But while this is going on, fighting still continues for control of towns around the Ukrainian capital Kyiv. British and US government sources confirm some gains by Ukrainian forces and Russian troop withdrawals around Kyiv, but point out any withdrawals may actually be for repositioning purposes rather than for any strategic retreat.
All right, now how about this one, Adam? Andrew Forrest's Fortescue mining group has signed a memorandum of understanding with a German energy company to produce and supply enough green hydrogen to Germany to replace about 1/3 of its Russian gas imports. The purported $50 billion deal would see a hydrogen supply bridge built between Fortescue's as yet unbuilt green hydrogen production plants in Australia and consumers in Germany.
A hydrogen supply bridge. All good news, it would seem, but yesterday morning Fortescue was put into a stock exchange trading halt. It revolved around that $50 billion number. Later in the morning, Fortescue said comments by Mr. Forrest at the Memorandum of Understanding signing were misinterpreted. Now, as yet, there's no firm commitment to spend money by Fortescue, despite Mr. Forrest saying, quote, "For us, it's a minimum $50 billion expenditure," end of quote. The company clarified that the $50 billion figure was a high-level assessment. It said there's no official commitment to the expenditure at this stage, and all such final investment decisions will be made by the board. Still, the market reacted very well once shares started trading again, and Fortescue closed up 1.6%.
Yeah, not a bad result after a bit of confusion there. Now, Adam, the $8.9 billion takeover of Crown Casino by US private equity giant Blackstone received the tick of approval from Australia's Foreign Investment Review Board on Monday. We mentioned that the other day. Yesterday, though, an independent expert also backed the takeover. The expert's report said Blackstone's $13.10 per share takeover was fair and reasonable, considering Crown's recent regulatory troubles and the prospects of a significant financial penalty for allegedly allowing money laundering at their Melbourne casino. It's interesting because if the fine exceeds $750 million, for those alleged offences, Blackstone has the ability to walk away from the deal. And if each alleged offence carried its maximum penalty, that $750 million threshold would be well and truly exceeded. But that's not really expected to happen. And it's more likely that the takeover would be able to proceed.
That's right, Michael. And that would see Crown's biggest shareholder, James Packer, collect around $3.3 billion. And it would also end his involvement in the gambling industry. The takeover would also help draw a line under Crown's troubled recent history, moving to a new owner. An inquiry and later a royal commission found that Crown facilitated money laundering and organised crime at its casinos. Shareholders are set to vote on the takeover next month, so we'll all be interested to see where those fines land.
Yeah, we certainly will. Now, Adam, we have to mention the flood crisis that's continuing to unfold in northern New South Wales. It's just been a terrible month, really, for the region in particular. We had record-breaking floods in places like Lismore, and now they're getting hit again.
Michael, it is just awful. In much of the footage, you can see that some people have been hit repetitively, not just once. So it feels for many of them, I'm sure, like they're just hoping for this to end. The rain keeps falling. Evacuation orders are in place for a number of towns, right from the mid-north coast of New South Wales and almost up to the Queensland border.
Yeah, it's shocking. All right, now, Adam, just for a very quick change of pace, I can't promise that this is going to be the last time I'll mention the budget, but one final piece of budget-related news for today. The TV show Married at First Sight. I assume you're a watcher of Married at First Sight. Actually, don't answer that. I'd rather just imagine that you are without you confirming it one way or the other.
Imagining's the only way I would have seen it.
Married at First Sight, Adam, got more than twice the number of TV viewers on Tuesday night than the budget did. There was just a touch over 1 million people right around Australia watching the final Vows episode of Married at First Sight, which I'm sure means a lot to you, Adam, while only 420,000, I was one of them, watched Josh Frydenberg deliver his budget.
I'm not sure what that says about us as a country, Michael, but just so you know, I was with a group of people all watching the budget.
You had a Married at First Sight party, didn't you?
No, I did not.
The truth comes out.
No one even flicked over.
Sure they didn't. All right, you just keep telling yourself that. All right, a few stories making international news this morning, Adam. We should mention these. Shanghai remains in a hard lockdown. It's having some predictable and also some unpredictable consequences. Now, China is the world's biggest exporter. Obviously, we've spoken about that before, and a massive amount of cargo goes through Shanghai's seaports and airports. But the lockdowns obviously mean, because of COVID, people can't get to work, which means businesses, if they have approval to open, can't function properly, and that's having a significant flow-on effect.
It is compounding, Michael. That's absolutely right. And at least 7 airlines have suspended some or all of their freight flights into Shanghai for the duration of the lockdowns. One of them, Cargo Lux, is a freight-only airline that normally flies 747 jumbos full of cargo in and out of Shanghai. They've stopped those flights until at least the weekend. I'm sure listeners would know we've talked about limited supply chains around the world for some time, and it's already hard to book cargo space because of that shortage worldwide. Now, more cargo capacity is temporarily out of the market, and that adds to the pressure on already overstretched global supply chains, probably leading to more delays, perhaps price rises and disruptions.
All right, how about this one? We'll keep this nice and brief. We've talked about the rising value of cryptocurrency. There's one group we didn't mention who are also benefiting. Last week, would you believe, hackers made off with $540 million worth of cryptocurrency. Since then, the value of that stolen crypto has risen to over $600 million. On a dollar value basis, this is now the world's second largest cryptocurrency theft. It's huge.
And it would have to be one of the world's biggest ever thefts, right?
Yeah, you're right. And people don't talk about it as much because it's a little more intangible.
Yeah, but could be a modern day Italian job. Now, in this case, Michael, the hackers targeted a blockchain project called Ronin last Wednesday. Ronin said the thieves used stolen private keys, which basically work like online passwords, to get the cryptocurrency. Ronin knows most of the funds are still in the hacker's digital wallet and is working with law enforcement and private cybersecurity investigators to retrieve the money. But in the meantime, Ronin users cannot withdraw or deposit funds on the network.
All right, finally, Adam, if you listen to Safe Word, which is our weekly podcast where we discuss things that are very kind of loosely related to business, we were last weekend talking about Netflix and about the sharing or not sharing of passwords from Netflix and other streaming platforms. Now, there's a reason why Netflix wants to crack down on the sharing of passwords, because it eats into subscription revenues, and that's eating into Netflix's profits.
Yes, it is, Michael. And Netflix's stock price is down almost 38% this quarter, and it's lost around half of its value since November. Now, this won't be all of the reason, but Netflix is facing tough competition from newer streaming platforms like Disney, and it's facing slower subscriber growth. So Netflix's paid subscriber growth averaged 24% every year between 2016 and 2020, but it only grew 9% last year. Now, in many businesses, 9% is good growth, but the stock market wants to see growth in subscriber numbers because that obviously increases Netflix's revenue. That's why a crackdown on password sharing might be one way to push new subscriber numbers up.
But you don't really watch Netflix, do you? Because Married at First Sight is on Channel 9.
It's on free-to-air.
That's right. So that story doesn't even really concern you. Anyway, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. And today, Adam, we're speaking with Tim Burrows, the founder of Mumbrella, who now runs another media newsletter called Unmade. It is a really fascinating chat. So you'll find it up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 31st of March, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And, of course, give your smart speaker a go. Just say, play the Fear and Greed podcast, and away you go. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.